Have you ever wondered why some people seem to have a direct, intimate connection with the divine, while others spend their entire lives searching but never seem to find that sacred presence? Have you ever felt like you're praying to an empty sky, meditating into silence, or seeking God in all the right places, but somehow missing the very essence you're looking for? Have you ever questioned whether there's something fundamentally wrong with your spiritual approach, or whether the divine is actually accessible to someone like you? If these questions just stirred something deep and perhaps painful in your spiritual heart, you're exactly where you need to be. Because what I'm about to share will reveal the most profound secret that Paramhansa Yogananda taught about finding the divine, and it's the opposite of everything most people have been told. This understanding will completely transform your entire approach to the sacred and open doorways to spiritual communion you never knew existed. You see, most people in the world have been taught that finding the divine requires going somewhere else, to a church, temple, or sacred place, or achieving some special state of holiness, or following complex religious practices for years before they're worthy of sacred connection. But the great spiritual master Paramhansa Yogananda revealed something that changes everything about how we understand the search for the divine. He lovingly taught us, according to this spiritual understanding, the secret that most seekers never discover is this: you are not trying to find the divine is trying to find you. Whether you call it God, Source, Universe, or the sacred, this presence is not hiding from you in some distant realm or behind religious barriers. The divine is closer to you than your own breath, more intimate than your own thoughts, more present than your own heartbeat. The only thing that prevents you from experiencing this sacred presence is the belief that you are separate from it. You are not seeking the divine. You are the divine seeking to remember itself. Whether you consider yourself deeply religious, casually spiritual, or even skeptical about the divine, whether you've been searching for years or just beginning to wonder about something greater than yourself, these teachings can offer profound insights. Please understand that these perspectives represent one spiritual understanding among many, and each person's relationship with the divine may unfold in unique and personal ways. If you've ever felt moments of inexplicable peace in nature, overwhelming love for no apparent reason, or a sense of connection that transcended your ordinary awareness, then you may have already experienced what Yogananda called divine recognition. Those sacred moments when the illusion of separation temporarily dissolves and you remember your true spiritual nature. And I promise you, by the end of this sacred journey together, you may never search for the divine the same way again. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through Yogananda's most revolutionary teaching about what he called the divine recognition process, an understanding that reveals why traditional seeking often fails and how to shift from searching for the divine to recognizing the sacred presence that is already within and around you. Please understand that these teachings represent one spiritual perspective among many, and each person's relationship with the divine may unfold differently. But first, let me ask you something that might feel surprisingly familiar. Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to find the divine through effort and striving, the more elusive that sacred presence seems to become? Have you observed that your most profound spiritual experiences often happen spontaneously when you're not actively seeking, perhaps in moments of natural beauty, deep love, or quiet surrender? Have you felt that there might be a fundamental misunderstanding in how you've been taught to approach the sacred? If you're recognizing this paradox in your own spiritual journey right now, you're already experiencing what Yogananda called the awakening to divine presence, where you begin to sense that what you're seeking might actually be seeking you. Yogananda explained it with breathtaking clarity when he said, "The greatest spiritual mistake is believing that the divine is somewhere else." When you search for the sacred outside yourself, you create the very separation that prevents you from finding what you seek. The divine is not an object to be found, but the very consciousness through which you are searching. The sacred is not a destination to reach, but the ground of being from which you have never been separate. Every breath you take is divine energy flowing through you. Every thought you think is sacred consciousness expressing itself as you. Every feeling of love you experience is infinite love recognizing itself in your heart. Now you might be wondering how this understanding can actually help you experience the divine presence that seems so elusive. And here's where it becomes truly life-changing. According to Yogananda's deepest teachings, there is what he called the law of divine recognition, a spiritual principle that shows how the divine reveals itself not through seeking, but through recognition, not through effort, but through awareness, not through becoming holy, but through remembering the holiness that may already be your true nature. This law reveals that when you stop trying to find the divine and start recognizing the sacred presence, the entire spiritual journey can transform from struggle to grace. Think about your own spiritual experiences for a moment. Can you remember times when you felt most connected to the divine? Were you striving and seeking, or were you in a state of openness, wonder, or surrender? Take a moment to really feel into those sacred moments, because what you're recognizing may be the natural way divine connection actually happens, not through effort, but through recognition, not through separation, but through unity. This recognition you just felt. It's what Yogananda called the moment of divine awakening. Every time you remember that you may not be separate from the divine, you don't find the sacred. You realize that the sacred has never been lost. And here's what makes this so transformative. When you understand that you are not seeking the divine, but that the divine may be expressing as your very seeking, the entire spiritual path can become a joyful recognition rather than a desperate search. Now, I want you to be completely honest with yourself for a moment. When you think about your relationship with the divine, do you feel like you're trying to reach something far away, or can you sense that sacred presence might be intimately close? Can you feel that perhaps what you call the divine might not be separate from what you call you? Your answer will reveal how ready you are to embrace what many consider the most liberating truth in spirituality. If you sense that intimate closeness, then you're ready for what comes next. Because now I'm going to share exactly how Yogananda taught people to shift from seeking the divine to recognizing the sacred through what he called sacred presence practice. The art of discovering the divine that may already be here, already now, already expressing as your very awareness. The method he taught works through what he called divine recognition meditation, consciously awakening to the sacred presence that is always available in this moment. Let's practice this together right now. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and simply notice that you are aware. Don't try to find the divine or create a spiritual experience. Simply recognize. I am aware. Something in me knows that I exist, that I am conscious, that I am alive. As Yogananda taught, this awareness itself may be divine consciousness recognizing itself as you. That which is aware of your thoughts is not your thoughts. That which is aware of your feelings is not your feelings. That which is aware of your experiences may be the timeless, infinite awareness that is your true nature. Did you feel that shift from seeking to recognizing? According to this teaching, that's the divine discovering itself as your own consciousness. If you felt even a subtle recognition just now, imagine what happens when you approach every moment of your life as an opportunity to recognize rather than seek the divine presence. But there's a deeper aspect of this practice that Yogananda said was essential for complete spiritual awakening. He called it sacred ordinary recognition. the practice of finding the divine not in special spiritual experiences, but in the most ordinary moments of daily life. Here's how Yogananda taught this life-changing practice. Instead of waiting for profound spiritual experiences or trying to create sacred moments, begin to recognize the divine in the simplest activities. When you breathe, you might recognize that the life force flowing through you is divine energy. When you feel love for anyone or anything, you might recognize that this love is infinite love, expressing itself through your heart. When you experience beauty, joy, or peace, you might recognize these as glimpses of your true divine nature. He taught that the sacred is not hiding in extraordinary experiences, but may be expressing as the very ordinariness of your daily existence. Let me share a story that beautifully illustrates this transformation. As I tell you this, I want you to ask yourself, what might change in my spiritual life if I stopped seeking the divine and started recognizing the sacred presence that may already be here? There was a devoted seeker who came to Yogananda feeling frustrated and spiritually exhausted, saying, "Master, I have been searching for God for 20 years. I have tried every practice, visited every holy place, studied every scripture, but I still feel so far from the divine. I meditate for hours but feel nothing. I pray constantly but hear no answer. I'm beginning to think that God doesn't want to be found by someone like me." Yogananda looked at him with infinite compassion and said something that completely shattered his understanding. "My dear child, according to our spiritual understanding, your problem is not that you cannot find the divine. Your problem is that you have been looking for the sacred, as if it were separate from you. You have been seeking water while standing in the ocean. You have been searching for light while you may be light itself. The divine is not hiding from you. The sacred may be expressing as the very one who is seeking, the consciousness that is aware of your seeking, the love that motivates your spiritual longing, the peace you experience in deep meditation. This may not be your consciousness, your love, your peace. This may be divine consciousness recognizing itself as you." He then taught him the sacred presence practice and divine recognition meditation. Instead of seeking the divine in special experiences, he began recognizing the sacred in his ordinary awareness. Instead of trying to create spiritual states, he started acknowledging the sacred presence in simple moments. Instead of feeling separate from the divine, he began recognizing that his very seeking might be divine love calling itself home. Over the course of several weeks of this practice, something beautiful began to unfold. He stopped feeling spiritually frustrated and began experiencing profound peace in the simplest moments. His meditation became effortless because he was no longer trying to achieve something, but simply recognizing what might already be present. His daily life became sacred because he saw every experience as divine consciousness possibly expressing itself. Most importantly, he discovered that he might never have been separate from the divine. He had simply been looking in the wrong direction. He realized, "Master, I thought I needed to find the divine, but the sacred was never lost. I may never have been separate from the divine. I was just believing that I was." When I share this story with people, they often ask with amazement, can recognizing the divine really be that simple? According to Yogananda's teachings, the answer may be yes, because the divine is not complex or distant. It may be the simple, immediate reality of your own conscious existence. Now here's what Yogananda wanted everyone to understand at the deepest level. He taught that the reason most people never find the divine is not because they're not good enough, spiritual enough, or devoted enough. It's because they're looking for something they may already be. As he beautifully said, according to this understanding, you will never find the divine because you may be the divine. You will never reach the sacred because you may be the sacred. You will never become holy because holiness may be your true nature. The secret is not to seek the divine, but to stop believing you are separate from the sacred. The moment you recognize that the seeker and the sought may be one, that the lover and the beloved may be one, that the worshipper and the worshipped may be one, you discover that you may never have been separate from the infinite love, peace, and joy that you have been seeking. If you're truly ready to stop seeking and start recognizing, then make this sacred commitment right now. I recognize that I may not be separate from the divine. I commit to seeing the sacred not as something to find, but as the very consciousness through which I am searching. I will practice divine recognition in ordinary moments, knowing that the sacred presence I seek may be the awareness that is already here. I choose to remember that I may not be a human being having spiritual experiences. I may be divine consciousness having a human experience. Say it with your whole heart. The divine you have been seeking may be celebrating this recognition. As Paramhansa Yogananda beautifully reminded us, the secret that changes everything is this. You may never find the divine because you have never been lost. The sacred is not hiding from you. You may be hiding from the divine by believing you are separate. When you stop seeking and start recognizing, when you stop trying to become spiritual and start remembering that you may be spirit itself, you discover that what you have been looking for may have been looking through your eyes, loving through your heart, and seeking itself as you all along. And before we part ways, I want to leave you with something sacred you can do right now to practice divine recognition. Take out your phone and write yourself one word that represents your commitment to recognizing rather than seeking the divine. Perhaps presence, recognition, unity, or awareness. Put it where you'll see it tomorrow morning. This simple act will anchor your understanding that the divine may not be somewhere else, but may be the very awareness reading these words right now. If this message awakened you to the divine presence that may never have been absent, I'd be deeply honored if you shared it with someone who needs this recognition today. Sometimes we become the vessel through which the divine reaches another soul who has been seeking everywhere except where the sacred actually may be, in the sacred presence of their own being. I'd love to know, what was that one word you wrote down about divine recognition? Share it in the comments below. Your recognition of the divine presence might be exactly what someone else needs to stop seeking and start remembering their true spiritual nature. Until our souls meet again in the one divine consciousness that we may share, may you remember that you may not be a seeker of the divine, but the divine seeking to recognize itself as you. Remember, dear soul, every breath you take, every moment you are aware, every experience of love or peace or joy may be the divine expressing itself as your very existence. Honor the sacred presence that you may be, trust in the divine recognition that is always available, and live each day knowing that you may not be trying to find the divine. You may be the divine finding yourself. Through understanding that the seeker and the sought may be one, you discover that the spiritual journey may not be about going somewhere else, but about recognizing the sacred presence that has never left you. This is Yogananda's most liberating gift, the recognition that you may not be separate from the divine you seek, but may be the very expression of infinite love, consciousness, and bliss that has been seeking to know itself as you throughout all eternity.